Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for General Studies papers of Civil Service main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 3. Let us read out the question carefully. While the target of meeting 50% of our energy needs by 2030 through renewables is indeed a laudable one. But more concerns must be addressed to ensure India truly benefits from the renewables revolution. So, as you can see, the question itself specifically points towards the target of meeting at least half of our energy needs by the year 2030 with renewable sources, from renewable sources. But at the same time, this is actually quite a laudable, quite a praiseworthy goal. But at the same time, there are some other concerns that must be addressed if we have to indeed, you could say, take benefit of this proverbial renewable revolution. As you can see, the question itself mentions a particular target. So we have to mention about the source of this target. That is exactly what we are opening our answer with. That as part of our intended nationally determined contributions, India has set the targets of reducing the emission intensity of GDP by 45% by 2030 from the baseline of 2005 level, and ensuring that at least we are actually copying this particular statement, that ensuring that at least 50% of total power generation comes from renewable sources by 2030. And as has already been mentioned, these targets come under the nationally determined contributions that was, you could say, offered by India at the Paris Conference of Parties under UNFCCC. Anyway, the point is India looks set to achieve the target of 50% renewable share in power generation by 2030, as by the year 2024, the end of year 2024, almost 47% of installed capacity installed power generation capacity was contributed by renewables. So we can see that we have made quite some progress of installing renewables power generation capacity, and it looks like that we would be, you could say, achieving the target of 50% renewable energy renewables from in our energy mix by the year 2030. However, there are concerns that must be addressed if the metaphorical renewables revolution were to indeed benefit India. So, what are the concerns that need to be answered? Taking them one by one. First is the concern of affordability and inclusion. You can understand this, that when something is affordable, it's likely to be more inclusive. That is, more people would be able to benefit from it. They would be able to, you could say, actually use it. So that these concerns are of importance, so that the energy starved poor partake in the revolution. Then comes balancing self-dependence and affordability, and the specific thing that we were pointing here is import substitution to build indigenous capacity. We would discuss these points in detail later, but the thing is, while it's always good to make something more affordable through, you could say, imported sources, through import, but the point is we should always think of developing our indigenous capacity, because these things have so many dimensions, including the dimension of trade balance as well as energy security. Hidden environmental costs of renewables, the specific example being that of battery recycling, that is still quite, you could say, dirty as well as hazardous also. Moreover, the impact of mega projects like mega solar parks on biodiversity. So the point is, most of the time the renewables are presented as panacea for all the environmental ills, which they are certainly not. That is, even the renewable sources like or renewable projects have some environmental costs. The two examples that we have given here is that of battery recycling, which is still quite dirty and hazardous, as well as the impact that the mega projects, the mega renewable projects would have on biodiversity. We should also think about promoting innovation, research and development in renewables, and the aspects like technology sharing. You do understand what is meant by technology sharing? Actually, what is happening that the developed nations which have most of the intellectual property for renewables are loath to sharing this thing with the developing as well as the, you could say, underdeveloped nations. They ask for commercial terms, they ask for payment for sharing this intellectual property, but it is a moral imperative, as well as, you could say, it also serves your self-interest, because the climate, because the environment is a common responsibility as well as it is of common concern. So it raises a moral question that we should always share some part of the technology, at least some part of the renewable technology, with our peers in among the developing as well as the underdeveloped nations. Again, there is also the question of what model should be adopted, whether we should go for mega projects or for more distributed generation. We can understand the example of understand these two things, these two terms through examples. Mega projects would include the mega solar power parks, which are coming up in Gujarat, Rajasthan, etc. And if we were to talk about distributed generation, it would mean, as we have often encountered, the rooftop solar plants. Elaborating on these points, despite the progress in complete electrification, the average Indian consumes barely 1.4 thousand kilowatt hour of power annually, much less than the Chinese average of almost 7k units. One more thing that you can note here, that the difference in power consumption is almost 5 times as compared to India and China. If you were to compare India with China, the average Chinese is consuming almost 5 times more energy, more power than the average Indian. And actually, this is almost the same kind of, you could say, asymmetry in the GDP, in the per capita GDP also, that the average Chinese has per capita income almost 5 times as much as the average Indian. So you can understand this thing, that the power consumption, this disparity in power consumption has, you could say, direct implication for the asymmetry in our economic, you could say, position also. Considering the indispensability of power access to economic development and improving life quality, we have to ensure that renewables revolution is truly inclusive, which is based on affordable power. Moreover, now this point is also important. While it's always, you could say, a praiseworthy goal to make renewables affordable, but we have to also think about our domestic capacity. Why? Because India depends on imports for almost 80% of its solar module and solar cell requirements. This has implication for our trade balance. You can understand it. This import would lead to your trade deficit, if not entire trade deficit, but certainly it would, you could say, skewer our trade balance, as well as energy security, especially if you are importing something of so critical importance, something of as much critical importance as, you could say, power or energy your needs from your main geopolitical rivals. We are obviously pointing to China. So the need of affordable renewable energy must be balanced with the imperative, that is the absolute necessity of building indigenous manufacturing. Due to, as we have already discussed, due to trade balance concern as well as the geopolitical, or you could say, energy security angle. While overall cleaner than fossil fuels, renewables do carry some environmental costs. As we were pointing out that the renewables are not a panacea for all the environmental ills. These hidden costs, you please use this term, you please include this, you could say term hidden costs in your answer script, like battery recycling or impact of renewable projects like solar parks on biodiversity. A very specific example that is of quite some relevance for India is the impact of solar parks that are coming up in Rajasthan, Gujarat, etc. on the Great Indian Bustard, whose you could say natural nesting ground is being disturbed by these solar plants. These two things, for like these things, example being you could say the hidden costs of renewables, including battery recycling, etc., as well as the impact of these projects on biodiversity, these should also be carefully addressed. India indeed has the institutional capacity, like research labs and scientific talent, to undertake research and development in renewables. Solutions developed for India, the point is the solutions which are developed for India will be more suitable for other developing nations as well, because we ourselves being developing nation, are the solution that we develop specifically for Indians can be of application for you could say citizens of the other developing and underdeveloped peers. Promoting innovation through dedicated research and development effort would not only help us make renewables more pocket and environment friendly, but also open lucrative markets for India. So these things, promoting research and development would go a long way, not only making the renewables affordable as well as environment friendly, but also open new markets for India, and including and moreover it would also include the moral point of sharing technology, that is of you could say great concern for the humanity itself. Moreover, it is also the right juncture, that is the right time, where India resolves the dilemma on what model to adopt. While mega projects will play larger role in renewables, a more distributed, democratized and affordable model like microgrid too should not be ignored. So we are indeed pointing out that we should not ignore the, you could say, the smaller scale projects for mega projects. Indeed, their programs, India has indeed made quite some progress in the right direction through programs like the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, which is a Government of India program of subsidizing, you could say, rooftop solar plants, and PM Kusum, that is Kisan Urja Sanrakshan Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan. That is actually this is a program for installing solar pumps. It is your task to recall the expansion of these abbreviations. That is something that no one can do for you. These are indeed steps towards the distributed generation. So we have to make you could say balance between the mega projects as well as the more democratized, affordable, distributed generation kind of projects. Now the conclusion we are arriving at is, with their cleaner, environment friendly nature, renewables are indeed a praiseworthy goal. At the same time, we should address concerns on inclusiveness, true environmental cost, incentivizing innovations, and self-sufficiency, etc., which all of these together would go a long way in materializing the prospects of the proverbial renewables revolution for India. So that was all on the concerns that must be addressed if we have to indeed gain all the benefits from the proverbial renewables revolution. This was all for today. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.